How you doing, guys? My name is Blacklight and I am your new resident PvP guy on PlanetDestiny, and I'm here to help you guys get better at Crucible and have more fun with it, because I think Crucible is a lot of fun and it's no fun getting slapped around in Crucible all day. So I'm here to help you get better at it, because that'll hopefully make you have more fun with it, except for when there's a little bit of lag. Okay, a lot of bit of lag. So having good gun skill is obviously a big part of doing well in Crucible, but I think an even bigger part is good map knowledge, and that's why I'm going to teach you guys how the best way to play all of the maps in PvP, particularly in Control, because Control has good flow, and in other maps the flow can be all over the place because people can sit in the backs of the map and they don't have to go anywhere. This map actually, Control actually forces you to go places. So I'm going to teach you how to play Control on Shores of Time today. So let's get into it. Also, all of the gameplay in this video is from a 50 kill Control game I got, because I like to run around a lot and get a lot of kills. So I'm gonna kind of promote that playstyle a little bit. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. Alright, so to start off, despite Shores of Time being a fairly small map, it has a lot of long open lines of sight, which is why for my setup, as far as guns go, I like to use a sniper for that purpose, and then a hand cannon, because hand cannons do better in short range than auto rifles or any other gun, in my opinion. So that kind of covers a little bit of my short range weakness, since I'm using a sniper, and then a heavy machine gun, because heavy machine guns are the most efficient way of getting a lot of kills with my heavy ammo for me and with my playstyle. Now for the actual map. So for your starting route, if you spawn on C side or A side, it's always going to be a rush to B. It's always great to get to B first, and you can pick up several mini kills and you're getting control of that B flag, which is pretty important. So when you're coming from C side, you want to jump up and position yourself so that nobody can shoot you from the cave like I'm doing, and then lob a grenade onto B and prepare for the enemies to come flying over. Generally you want to use an AoE grenade here, and if I was on Xbox One or PS4, I would switch to an incendiary grenade here, and then next time I die, switch back to a trip mine. But I don't have that luxury because of the long load times on 360, so I just stick with my trip mine because I'm going to get more use of that in the long run. But generally an AoE grenade is your best, because a lot of times a lot of people are going to be flying over to B. So you want to get up here quick, because it's pretty easy to catch the enemies while they're vulnerable, while they're in the air flying over to B, because they have to jump to make that gap, and that's why I like this rush route here. Then take a peek into the cave, and once the radar is all clear, you can hop onto B and start capturing it, and be sure to look towards the A spawn, because that's where they'll be. Now if you're coming from A side, generally it's about going where you're needed. So if you see 3 teammates going to B, hold off, see if they start getting shot, and then pop out in the cave. If you see them all going to the cave, hold off for a second, hop on B, and then as your teammates are distract them, you pick them off as they're looking at your teammates in the cave. Now if you happen to be rushing B by yourself, which happens like 90% of the time, then what you want to do is you want to jump the gap and either get behind that long pillar at B, or you want to go ahead and jump straight to behind that small little rock formation at B. And you want to lob a grenade through as you cut across that area if you see any enemies, so you can go ahead and get them kind of weak. And if you're using a hand cannon, this works particularly well. It works with other guns as well. So you can get a few enemies low. Then the way B works is they're only going to be coming from one side at the beginning. They're only going to be coming from, if you're facing the doorway, the left side. Almost nobody ever makes the jump from the pillar and then jumps to B, because you're so vulnerable in the time that you're jumping. But it's a good idea to practice, aiming out of sights every now and again, every few seconds, just to make sure that nobody's making that jump going for that flank. And see, the way B works is everybody's going to be coming from the left side if you're facing the doorway at the beginning, so you can position yourself on the outer circle of B while still partially behind the rock formation on B, and you can be aiming and ready to shoot people in the head as they walk around that corner. So you can actually take down multiple enemies, especially if you grenaded them, because they're going to be coming around the corner at the exact spot you're aiming. There's nowhere else they can come from. So that's the best rush route for each side. Usually that'll get you a few kills and the all-important B control. Okay, so now for the most important part, the spawns. Learning the spawns for each map is the best way to improve at Crucible, and knowing where your enemies are going to be coming from, despite them not being on your radar, is pretty awesome, because even though your radar is good, it's not all powerful, and this map particularly has a lot of long lines of sight, so you're gonna a lot of times be shot by enemies that aren't on your radar. And while I do think the flags influence somewhat where you and the enemies spawn, what's more influential is where your team is and where their team is. So you gotta take note of where your team is spawning, because their team is probably gonna be on the other side of that. Personally, I prefer the C spawns. In a lot of this game you'll see it starts off 3v6, and it's me kind of trying to work my way over to C flag and try and claim more of the CB spawn area, because that's what I prefer. It's more open and enemies kind of have to funnel out of A, so I'd like to control C and B because A is a less open area compared to C, and it's easier to control where the enemies are coming from and know which points they'll be funneling out of, because they're kind of stuck in a cave. So for control on Shores of Time, you got 7 spawn points to worry about. There are 2 on C side, which are going to be here and here, one being the base spawn, the other being the stairs spawn. While you're capturing C, these spawn points are not going to be appearing on your radar unless you're on the outer circle towards them. And this is very important because they are going to be spawning there heavily. If somebody dies, they're going to spawn them there if they have control of C and B generally. And they're going to be spawning them there, so you got to know that they're going to be coming from one of those directions, even though they're not on your radar. And then there's also going to be enemies coming from B once they see that you're capturing C. And then there's one more spawn point behind you, here. It's a pretty rare spawn point while you're capturing C, but if your team and enemies are set up in a particular manner, somebody can spawn there, so it's important that you know about it. So if your team is spawning in the C areas behind you, it'd be a good idea to watch that cave. Then as far as A side goes, we've got the base A side spawn, then we've got inside of A, then we've got here, between B and A, and finally, again, we have that spawn point in the cave in between A and C. This is like your transitional spawn point, and if one team is pushing heavy onto B, they'll flip them to this spawn point and let them make a choice on whether or not they want to make a stand at C or go for A. This spawn is the most like flip-floppy, and enemies can kind of spawn there whenever, just depending on if people are far enough away, because it's between A and C. So the inside of A spawn is very heavily locked for A flag, and you can be controlling the A base spawn as well as the flip-floppy AC spawn, and enemies are still going to be spawning inside of there. So this is a really good spot to kind of almost spawn trap them, while you've got the B and C flag controlled, of course. So those are the 7 most important spawn points for this map, and if you learn those and are able to judge where enemies are going to spawn based on where your team is and where the enemies are, you're going to have a great time on this map. Knowing where the enemies are going to be coming from is the most important skill you can have, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. So I will see you later, and if you want to check out my channel, link in the description below.